Okay, so today we're talking about processes or ways of working and giving some tips on what to think about there, how to ensure that you have consistent ways of working, you embed those and you support them with the right technology. And the word support is key there because we often see in organizations that people bring in a shiny bells and whistles system and then try and figure out processes around the system, and that's the wrong way around. So that's what we'll do today. This is one of 13 in a series, and we're getting towards the end of our autumn series. Next week, we're focusing on marketing, and the following Friday, the 13th, on organization structure, organization design. So please mark those dates in your diaries and do feel free to join us on the next couple of Fridays. Just want to remind again very quickly that our approach to sales effectiveness is very holistic. We look at 12 dimensions. Today's is one of them, processes and systems. But looking at any of these in isolation isn't going to net you the right results. You have to look at all of them in the round to be effective. Processes and systems, however, can make a really significant difference, especially in organizations where people are left to their own devices and do their own thing, and organizations where systems aren't enabled in the right way to support your processes effectively. So this is one where one can make a really tangible difference in a short period of time. So just want to ask you all, to start with, how consistently adopted are your own sales processes within your respective organizations? And because we're a relatively small group today, I mean, either use the chat by all means, but feel free just to shout and let us know.
I think that's one of the issues I'm facing at the minute, is that it's somewhere between A and B, in that there is a process, there is stuff outlined, but actually, because of the nuances of people owning their own accounts or different regions and different isms, there's then quite a lot of difference. Not really a huge problem day to day, but in some cases they deal with the same overall organization, but different parts of that. And therefore, if we're billing or communicating differently, that's when it started to become an issue. So it's the kind of thing I'm facing at the moment.
Okay, no, that's great. That's really helpful.
From Graham, we have a B nearly C.
Okay.
Yeah. In many ways, we can't really move outside of a process, might be the best way of answering it. I spent a lot of time since I got here 18 months ago getting the guys to adhere to all sorts of process. It could be a cease process, it could be the quote process, it could be the order process, billing, and keeping everything inside the correct way, because it was Wild West without it, right? So I think we're a B, nearly C, and that could be pre-sales as well as post-sales.
Okay. And any other comments, Ali?
No, not really. I mean, just it's only me at the moment, so when I do my own thing, so.
Well, it's not only you, but no, I know, but you've got a team.
Yeah, I do, but no, everybody does their own thing. It's yeah.
And then would you say that you've got the right tech, and is that tech appropriately adopted?
There's not a no and yes option.
No.
Well,
I think we use what we've got well, but it's quite outdated and isn't necessarily fit for purpose as we grow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Okay. No, that's really interesting.
And if there are, if you have different types of salespeople, if you've got account managers, you've got more hunting type people, and you've got telesales, do you observe different behaviors in terms of adoption of systems or adoption of different sales processes?
Systems are similar, things like Salesforce, and we have an internal CRM behind that. Again, you can't move out of that. So whether you're lead genning or hunting or account management, you're bound to get to the same start point of a system like that. Quoting tools, again, you have to get to the start gate. Everybody has to go at the same place to start. It's the technology platforms, as Bruce was saying underneath, that might need the refresh or the next level of intelligence to help them.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's super useful. Thank you. So we always like to start with a view of the end-to-end sales process, and that's going to vary by organization. There'll be nuances by organization, but broadly speaking, in every organization, there's something around finding the right prospects, winning them, converting them. Depending on what you're selling, there'll be some kind of setup or some kind of installation. And then it's about nurturing your customers. So doing everything you possibly can to grow, whether that's through cross sales or just getting them to buy more of what it is that you sell, retaining them. And then very few organizations that we work with have got any kind of consistent process in place for winning back customers that they've lost. And that can yield very quick benefit because those are some of your warmest leads. So what we'll do today then is just dive into a few of these areas. So we'll take a little look at market mapping and lead generation prioritization, proposals, account plans, and then some thoughts on technology as well, specifically. So in one of the earlier webinars, we covered market mapping in more depth, and we always refer you to our YouTube channel where you can see all of our previous webinars. But what we always suggest is to figure out which sectors or subsectors do you want to play in and do you want to win in. And a lot of organizations take a shoot from the hip approach to this. And even better if you can come up with criteria that say a market is particularly attractive or a subsector of a market is particularly attractive because of X, Y, and Z, because it has attributes that lend themselves very well to our product or service. And then you can do a fairly scientific process of prioritizing sectors and subsectors by attractiveness for your own business. Once you've done that, how do you get hold of people, organizations? How do you get their contact details so that your marketing team can start generating MQLs or marketing qualified leads? And there are any number of organizations out there now that will, to a basic extent for free, and to a greater extent for a monthly or annual subscription, help you just with just that. They'll help you find the email addresses of contacts within organizations that you specify. And I don't know whether any of you have experience with any of these, or whether you currently use or have used any of these.
We've just this week signed off on Cognizant.
Okay.
We took them for a trial.
Yeah.
We used Navigator already. We also contacted ZoomInfo, which is on your list, who were slow to respond and then became very elusive when it came to talking about pricing, so they missed out.
Yep.
Cognizant, to be fair to them, the service was excellent, the trial was excellent. We had very strict guidelines as to what the trial success criteria were.
Yep.
In advance of the 7-day trial starting. So we were quickly able to, if you like, monetize by time saving or quality of lead. And we found it, chalk and cheese. We spend about 5-6 grand a year buying in data from data brokers.
Right. Right.
Straight away, 30% of it you probably can't use because you can't spend enough time defining it down into your sectors and subsectors. So we were able to clean up that 30% very, very quickly during the trial.
Yeah, fantastic.
So it's been long overdue. Just trying to get the quality. Potentially, we go from 2 lead generators to 1 just by using some automation and
Yep.
and a tool that works, right? So I'll probably save a head count.
Yep.
Straight away.
Yep. No, exactly that. Exactly that. Bruce, do you use any of these tools at all?
No experience with any of them.
Okay. Worth checking out, and happy to have a conversation offline if you'd find that helpful at all. But yeah, they can all be really useful. And Graham, you use Salesforce, I believe.
Yeah. So
and
it'll
I'm
underpin the linkage between Salesforce, Navigator, and Cognizant, and you can plug them together basically. So if you're in Cognizant, it can generate the lead into Salesforce for you with the right contact details, and away you go.
exactly that. Exactly that. So that's that's something that you wouldn't necessarily have got with your previous buying of lists.
No, they're just lists with numbers missing and emails missing and things. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Okay. And then we mentioned on a previous webinar that you can segment your leads. You can segment your customers too, but you can segment your leads by their relative attractiveness so that you're prioritizing your scarce marketing or hunting resources on the leads that you think will bear the most fruit. And this example here has some criteria, but you may well have your own criteria that are more relevant to your business. We'd always, suggest trialing and experimenting. We always suggest having almost an internal SLA that if marketing furnishes your sales team with a lead, that the sales team does something with that lead within 24 hours or within 2 hours or within a week, depending again on your business and on your resources. But the point is that that there should be some kind of internal agreement in place that this is the way we do things here. Because we again see time and time again in organizations that marketing and sales work in silos, that marketing come up with an initiative to generate loads of leads, and sales are either too busy or uninterested, or it wasn't invented here, so they're not running with those leads in the way that marketing was expecting them to do. So basic internal communication, but some kind of agreement in place. And then the key is about being consistent and about being systematic. Again, what we often see is somebody wakes up in the morning and says, "Shit, we haven't got enough leads. Let's go out and get loads of leads." And you do that through some kind of exercise, and it's not a continuous, consistent process, which it needs to be really. So any thoughts, questions, considerations around finding your prospects, around generating leads before we move on to proposals?
I would say you talked about consistency of approach. So having introduced a lead gen person from scratch, putting them through like a sales academy, they can get lost with the amount of work coming in, you know, project A, B, C, this area, that region, this product. I finally worked out how to set up cadences in Salesforce.
Right.
So you've got your 10 or 13 or 12 stages of which you're forcing the agent to do the LinkedIn introduction. The automated email goes out on day 1, the next call's on day 3, the fourth call's on day 13, and then of course I get all my reporting. That's been a revelation.
Great.
And it's particularly from the management information, but it keeps them on the straight and narrow. They've got a work queue every day.
Yeah.
So worth mentioning, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it drives that consistency. No, that's a really great example, Graham. Thank you.
Setting up cadences is not fun with Salesforce, by the way.
It's quite easy on
very hard.
HubSpot.
Oh, good. We just ditched HubSpot a while ago.
Oh, did you? I don't have that in this role, but previously, using HubSpot, I found it very, very easy to integrate various different task lists and stuff to then create that exactly like you say. It's easy to follow on. It's easy to generate last engagements and stuff like that. But we found that it was 70% good by itself, and the other 30% came from Zapier, where you were pinging information out via webhook to then process it differently and send it back in for some of the stuff that HubSpot internally was missing. But I'm a huge fan of automation to I think as well as saving time, the increase in accuracy that you see by putting some automated processes in is huge and pays for itself tenfold without having to go back and fix mistakes when it works.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. That's really, really useful input. So, what's happened? Sorry. Just looking at another area of the end-to-end sales process, proposals. And we picked this because, again, we go in and we review lots of organizations each year, and we're always startled by the quality of proposals. And what we often see is focus being completely the wrong way around. So there's a big chunk about our company and how wonderful our company is up front. And then there's something about products and services that we can offer, and then you've got the cost. And that's just not good practice. What we advocate is, and this may be stating the obvious to you, but we just don't see it very often. What we advocate is always starting with the clients or the prospects challenge or opportunity, and demonstrating a really deep understanding of it with some empathy, but really more than the empathy is that you just get it, you understand it. And then how our product or service addresses that challenge and does so in a way that is better than what the competition are capable of doing. And then what that means in terms of benefits, and to the extent that those benefits can be quantified, that's ideal. And again, in all too often, we don't see that, even though it is possible to quantify the benefit. We just don't see it, either because the sales rep is lazy to figure it out, or just hasn't been trained effectively enough to incorporate. We don't see enough examples of social proof. So who else do we work with that is relevant? So not in a completely different industry, completely different use case, but which customers who might be competitors of our prospect do we already serve today, and what testimonials can we add to the proposal to demonstrate how thrilled they are to work with us. And then the terms, ideally with our best understanding of potential return on investment, and then some kind of call to action that introduces a sense of urgency without without being silly about it. So this all sounds really obvious, but we put it out here because we rarely see it in practice like this. And again, invite any comments. Actually, I'll just share a couple of other considerations, and then would really appreciate learning from you what has worked really well for you, or where you're finding it tricky. So just some other considerations. If you are able to glean from your prospect or your customer what their evaluation criteria are, that can enable you to make the proposal really stand out. Their criteria might be far less about price than you imagined it would be, and more about other considerations that you might not have considered, ESG being one of them. You might not have considered focusing on your own ESG credentials, but that might be very important for your client or your prospect. Asking for coaching from a friendly stakeholder. Sometimes it is possible to send an advance copy of your proposal to a coach on an informal basis, seek their feedback, which can be absolutely invaluable. And the organizations we work with don't do that enough. And then finally, having a really good understanding both of decision makers and influencers. So the CFO might have an important role to play, depending on the product or service that you're selling. Other departments beyond procurement or beyond product, wherever you're selling into, may have a really important role to play. And to the extent that we can map out who is going to decide and who is going to influence and speak to their needs as well, the chances of our proposal landing are that much higher. So I'll stop there on proposals, but would welcome any comments from any of you, please, on any aspect of proposals.
I don't think it's not something that I can necessarily feedback much on. Quite new into the loop in current business, and a lot of dealing with established clients and customers rather than actually going out fishing at the minute. That's the next building capability. So not a lot of feedback, but really interesting food for thought.
Okay, cool. And Graham,
your first point about the way you laid out it's about the company, then it's our services, then it's the cost at the bottom.
Yeah.
I think we're guilty of that all day long. I don't think we've rebuilt proposals for 20 years.
Yeah.
Bids are very different, of course. Formal bids, I get that. They're very different. But standard day-to-day stuff, guilty. Got a lot of work to do there.
Yeah. I mean, most organizations that we review are very guilty, so it wouldn't surprise me. But it's so powerful if you can just flip it around and start with your understanding of their need, because that's just going to resonate much better. Okay. Thank you. Marek, do you want to share a few thoughts on account plans?
Yeah, sure. So I'll get to our point of view on use of CRM systems for this, but first, Um, when we see account plans, and these could be for very, very, very big strategic customers, or it could be for smaller customers. Something you often see is either the stuff very much on the left, like we know a lot, or we think we know a lot about the customer, about the competition, about their products, maybe about their stakeholders, decision making, things like that. And or we see a lot of what's on the right, which is we do a lot, right? This, we're going to go and see this person, see that person, do this, do that, keep ourselves busy. And often what's on the left, the know, what you know, and what's on the right, the doing, isn't very well connected, right? And I guess the bigger the customer, the more you kind of really have to sort of think about why you're doing what you're doing, and take your knowledge, do some synthesis around it. What does this really mean? What does it really mean for us? What does it mean for the customer? Develop some account objectives, strategies. What do we want to achieve there? Turn that into actions that are directly linked to what you're actually trying to achieve, the objectives. I mean, all written there is, the account plan translates knowledge of the customer's buying process into objectives and concrete actions. And we're not saying boil the water on this, because it's possible to do that. But there is a lot of that stuff in the middle, which often gets overlooked or is implicit, or isn't documented, let's just say. And maybe we can pop to the next slide, please, Andy. So the kind of things, what do you need to know about, your customer's business model, the market they're operating in, the financials, their financials, but also your financials, what you're selling, any cross-sell, share a wallet, things like that, what you could be selling to them. Obviously, the stakeholders, you have relationships, the ones you don't, things about the competition, what value propositions would resonate, but also, especially with the bigger accounts, it's often not a one-person job. There's an account team, a cross-functional account team. So who's doing what? What are the different roles there? Again, with things.
Right. Sorry.
With things like SWOTs and barriers and drivers, people can be put off by a lot of that. So again, you don't want to boil the ocean with these things, but it's all these things are different ways of just structuring the thinking. And then account objectives. What we often see with account objectives, if there are any, are things like we need to sell £1 million, right? That's not an objective. I mean, it's great. Okay, how are you going to do that? What are the critical things they need to achieve in that account to get to that £1 million? Or it's, oh yeah, we need to go and visit these 4 people. Well, great, but with what objective? So yeah, it's just really account planning is just about putting some thought into it. And in terms of the systems, if you were talking to me 10 years ago, I would say, you know what, if you do this on the back of a fact packet, if you do this in an Excel spreadsheet, if you do this in a notebook, I don't really care as long as you do the thinking. Nowadays, I would say all of this, or most of this, the brainstorming and things like that, you can do in different ways, but the actual documentation of most of the key information and the objectives and your actions and tracking should be in your whatever CRM system you're using. But it looks like there's a lot of information here. I would counsel keeping it simple. I've seen multi-tab, multi-pop-up, multi-window account plans that are full of either garbage in, garbage out because someone's filled it in once and couldn't bring themselves to touch it again for years, or it's just empty. So keep the core information in there. Keep it, see smart, challenging, smart, specific, measurable, actionable, all that kind of good stuff. Keep it good and keep it fresh. You don't put too much in and it's the right stuff. Review it, keep it fresh. And again, that's as we well know with these things, that's often the pitfall, keeping it fresh and relevant. I mean, you've probably all seen and experienced these sort of challenges. I mean, I welcome any war stories around these.
This might be appropriate. There's usual sort of senior management dictates they want an account plan. Salesperson goes, wow, this is just an admin exercise. Nobody will ever read it. And actually, I'm a bit of a cynic in the middle. I don't think they're used properly. They're certainly not used by senior management to help.
Yeah.
And you get a bit of a kick in, and oh, you didn't do your account plan, so it's not in your annual score for your appraisal, and you can just go around in circles. But I'm not one for just completing them for the sake of completing them, and I avoid them, to be honest. We got certain problems with how many customers you do them for as well. So we load our guys quite heavily with 80, 90 accounts. You can probably only do top 5 customers per person, maybe, would be logical. So we struggle, and I'm a bit of a cynic whether there's value. And I know I should do it, right? I agree with you, Merrick.
And that's not, and of course that's not uncommon. If you've got 80 customers, I mean, that's pushing the bandwidth, the number of relationships a human, I think there are statistics around it, can actually manage, right?
Yeah, meaningful
And
way, yeah.
meaningful ones, exactly that. Yeah. And you're right. The point is, there's an appropriate level of planning for each type of customer. You're not going to do this for everyone. The thing is, I agree that people ignore it, and it can be looked at as a box ticking exercise, but it's whatever you can use to drive the thinking, really. And keep it simple, keep it relevant, and keep the most important things documented to an appropriate level. The danger is if you push people to boil the ocean, you get nothing.
I'm tempted to use the logic soon for a slight twist. Instead of doing it, some of the customers, a lot of them are existing, they're quite loyal, but I need to generate new logo.
Mm-hmm.
I have to turn to a vertical strategy pretty quickly. So therefore, you're going to start writing vertical plans. So for motor or construction or whatever. So I'm going to have to turn the thinking that way, I think. If that makes sense, because the logic and the tools are all going to be the same, roughly.
And,
okay.
And can I just add an insight into this one? Like Graham, I think it's finding that balance of doing enough so that you can make decisions based on it. But when you have 80 to 90 accounts, you can't do proper account plans. It's just way too much. So for me, what I've done in the past is I've categorized them into what is a strategic partnership with, and have the absolute top 3 or 4 companies, either by that they bring in the most revenue or they're strategically important because we know that there's so much growth capacity in there, and they get a bigger account plan or an account sort of more of a golden handshake, if you wish. They get that VIP gold standard there, and then categorize the rest of them in maybe two separate groups, emerging accounts, maybe when they purchase just once or just one feature or whatever it is, and then have the rest in there. And that for me has helped to reduce the onus of having big plans for everybody, because it's not sustainable in my experience.
Thank you, Katrina. Just in the interest of time, I'll just move us on. Just a couple of thoughts on retention. I don't know. Is Wayne is driving from a client site today. I don't know if you're with us, Wayne, at this moment in time. This was a project that I did several years ago for Wayne when he was my client, and we looked at retention of accounts, and we concluded that it wasn't just enough for a farmer, an account manager, to pick up the phone just as the contract was lapsing and say, could we get another 5 years of business from you, please? It really needed to start several months before the contract lapsed, and it really needed to involve different departments. And I'm not suggesting for 1 second that this is necessarily relevant to your respective businesses as you see it, but something along these lines might be a lot more simple. Could give you some food for thought around are we doing everything we possibly can well in advance of a contract expiring to ensure that it's a no-brainer for them to recontract with us and it happens seamlessly and easily. Again, I prefer rather than sort of rabbiting on, I prefer any thoughts, any challenge, any tips around what works for you guys out in the field in your respective businesses.
I like your optimism of getting the new signature 6 months in advance of the contract expiry. That's good. I think it's back to what we were saying earlier. Katrina was sharing it as well. We're putting a lot of weight on very few people. We're trying to do account management, hunting, all the stuff we've talked about, and retention is key. So can they get to these renewals early enough? I would go back to automation. Some of the reports you get, you'll know businesses are really bad at keeping data when contract renewals are up. You've got to be starting on them in our world probably 3 to 6 months before, for more transactional. So it's that for me is about trying to help information to put it in front of the guys and help them that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good point. Like Graham was saying there, I think everybody's a bit under the cosh by the time you ask them for this plan and that procedure and this whatever else, and you kind of just end up in a spin. That one of the lessons that I took away from the last place that I worked at was kind of analysing whether data is useful or being used or not. And I think a key example there is like, when is this up? When is the next engagement that we need to make? When do we need to follow up with this? Quite often it's like, oh, I've not heard from them in a while. And then you sort of do it. Whereas actually, again, to reference HubSpot, because I found it the easiest to build in because we had a developer's account with them, you could then add to people's tasks as soon as that person hadn't been communicated for X amount of time, or their service was, with them it was training delivery. So you know that your certificate lasts for 3 years from date of course. So even though we didn't really keep the renewal date as such, we did keep the training date, and therefore actually by using a couple of logic gates and some algorithms, you were able to generate when we should be following up, whether it was emails to individuals or calls to businesses with more clients.
Yes. Yeah.
But essentially, making data useful, I think, is the biggest challenge, because you can have it or have it somewhere, but using it and having it accessible without it becoming a burden is the biggest challenge for me.
I mean, we see so many examples of where just the very basics, like the contract expiry month, isn't even in the CRM, and people are relying on spreadsheets and then not having reminders at the right time, and you know, so often there are some basic things that can be put right. But I'm not suggesting that you guys need to do that, but it's something we often find. So if you look at every phase of the end-to-end sales process, you end up with a more consistent number of relevant MQLs, which you can turn into SQLs and then proposals, close deals, and if you look after retention, repeat deals. And we've shared this funnel before, but it is a numbers game. You know, it's all about how many customers, how many repeat customers, at what value, at what margin. And in order to get those customers, how many proposals do you need? How many leads do you need? And filling the hopper on a consistent basis rather than one-off batches here and there. If you can get that right, and it's not easy, if you can get it right, then that is the key to unlocking profitable growth. Just a few thoughts on technology. We see time and time again that a all singing and dancing, fully spec'd system has landed in the organization, and nobody's really given sufficient thought to how is this going to be used? Is it what we really need? Is it fit for purpose? When something much more simple would do the job. Most organizations now have a CRM, and a lot of them have Salesforce and HubSpot. But what we see time and time again is that it's not been well adopted. A fraction of what it can do is being used, and no more than that. And there's a disconnect between potential functionality and actual use. So again, just a few considerations here. Tech is always the enabler. It's always the support rather than the other way around. And in some organizations that we've reviewed, whether it's a very keen or overly zealous CEO or CIO who thinks that all problems will be solved with the nicest, most expensive, shiniest system. The reality is that it doesn't work that way. Tech has to be considered second as the enabler. And the key issue is always adoption. And what we see that makes the very biggest difference is leadership role modeling. In organizations where the CEO or the head of sales isn't an advocate of the CRM does not get adopted properly. It's as simple as that. Where you've got a CEO who rings up the sales director and says, hang on a minute, we just did a massive pitch at company XYZ. I'm not seeing that in the system. I'm not seeing any notes about it, or I'm not seeing the opportunity, or the opportunity is not at the right stage. As soon as that kind of interaction is happening, that's when the CRM gets used by, and the usage trickles all the way down. So we cannot overemphasize the importance of leadership role modeling. And you can use carrots and sticks. So some organizations we see say, we don't pay incentives out unless the hygiene is there with the CRM. That is something that you have to do before you're considered for any kind of bonus, no matter whether you've knocked the numbers out of the park or not. Trialing, so you've just trialed Cognism. You wouldn't have gone ahead had the trial not gone well, Graham. It did go well, so you've gone ahead. All of these organizations and others that are not on here, because this is just an illustrative sample, will offer trials, and we urge you to take them up on those and see what's possible for your organization. And just the final thought here is around roles in the organization. So many times we go into an organization and the CRM isn't being adopted, and we say, who wakes up in the morning and bangs their fists on the table championing the adoption of the CRM? And the answer is, there's nobody. So it could be the sales director, but it could also be a sales operations or sales enablement role. That can work really well too. And you can give that person a wide range of remits. So it could be the CRM champion. It could also be the person in charge of market mapping and finding leads, and ensuring the leads are the right ones. Alternatively, that function can be undertaken by marketing, but it depends on how well resourced your marketing department is and the type of people within marketing. So that's a consideration too. Any other thoughts on steps that you've taken or that you've seen to get technology really working for you? Or frustrations that you have, and you know, that you'd welcome the BFG team or other participants on this call to furnish you with some ideas on.
I think it's something that I'm working on just now, so I can't necessarily comment on its effectiveness. But I'm expecting to move from our quite old CRM system to HubSpot in circa 6 months.
Yeah.
Whether that happens or not, it remains to be seen, but that's what I've been promised at the moment. And all of the, because I've got a working knowledge of it previously and know how we expect and put it together, all the processing forms that I'm putting together now will mirror the logic style questions that will be asked on the deal pages there.
Mhm.
So although it's still a manual process, rather than changing it once to then change it again in the future, I think if you can do it with a good amount of foresight to say, well, actually, this is what I'm implementing. And then once the technology catches up, to then be able to say, okay, this is how A becomes 1 and B becomes 2,
Mhm.
will hopefully mean that that is seen as a welcome change.
Yeah. And what CRM solution do you use today, Bruce?
It is called High Rise. It's quite unknown. I think
Okay.
it was created by 32 Signals or something a year ago.
Yeah.
It's a somebody owning a bake shop CRM really, and you know, it's not necessarily fit for purpose, but some of the reporting stuff that goes in and out of it has been used in a really good way, and that's why to your first question I said, actually, I think although we're using some quite outdated stuff, it's being utilized to its fullest extent, which I suppose is
Great.
arguably more important than having something
It is.
great like you're saying
It
and
is.
only using 10% of it.
It is. It is. No, that's great. Graham?
So I'm getting quite comfortable with tools, and if we could just use that word on the screen here for the sales side, it's then the next stage is what they interact with. So we have built our own internal ordering platform, how customers get quotes. None of it's automated. It's very hard to manage. The internal systems team don't have time to do the upgrades we need. And now I need to start going back to the business to say, we need to go to market, right? People do this off the shelf and they'll manage it, and it'll probably be cheaper overall. So I need to go to the next stage is the tools we interact with for, you know, putting quotes out, getting automated orders back, and even automating orders straight past order management, as in a person, straight to suppliers.
Yeah.
So it's all out there. I've got to get some waking up done. So that's another stage.
So you've got a fair bit on your plate there, Graham, but very exciting.
Yeah, well, we're 130, 140 organization. There's only 13 or 14 salespeople. So we've got to do this or we just can't grow. We're not going to get more resource in the current climate, as everybody's feeling.
Yeah.
So we've got to look at this and go the other way, right through the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I won't dwell on. I need to figure out why the slides are not moving. Sorry. Just books. We touched on a couple of these only last week, but I think predictable revenue in particular, Graham, for your business is a must read. And the Challenger sale is about the mindset of putting the customer's issues first and foremost, and likewise spin selling. So that's one of several ways in which one can sell, but it's again putting the customer's need first. So if you haven't read these are worth a read. And just end on what can you introduce in the near term to foster better and more consistent ways of working, having had this discussion just now for the last 45 minutes or so. Graham, what are you going to do?
Shout at a few people to hurry up with, you know, oh, we need a business case. We need a business case. Yeah, we've done the business case. That was 6 months ago. And you still haven't made a decision to move this platform or get automation. So it's getting Cognism through took ridiculous lengths of time. That's just madness. So as I said earlier, I need to now look at the next level of interaction and start on those. So order system would be the biggest one for us. We're already invested in a service platform. It's not service now. I can't remember what it's called. ConnectWise.
Yeah.
So that will help with ticketing, you know, faults in, fault management, order management, queuing. Great, but blooming hard to implement. So I will go and look at the order management system next because that affects me the most.
Okay. And Bruce?
I don't think I've picked anything new for the near term, but a good sort of food for thought and some reinforcement around what I've been thinking about doing already. Like I say, that trying to make the user interface piece as consistent as possible with any changes that we're making to then set the conditions for the tech to catch up in the future is really been a focus. So the fact that you sort of said that up front, quite good, quite reassuring. Yeah.
And Ali?
From my side, really just getting some fully defined processes into Salesforce and really cleaning that up be the main thing. Okay.
And Natasha, you've been on mute. I don't know if you've got any reflections. If you're still with us, I'm not sure. Natasha's still on mute, so we'll leave her on mute. Good. So we've covered the BFG grade previously with you all. Next week's focus is on marketing and marketing effectiveness. So again, please put 1 o'clock in the diary for next Friday. We'd love to see you. And we wish you an amazing weekend and week ahead and look forward to seeing you on Friday.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye. Bye.